Hi there. So Pastor Matt began his series on the divine name of this great story in Exodus 3 where God reveals his personal name to Moses. It's a great story. It's a story of an 8-year-old man. We don't often think about Moses as being that old, but he was. He was an old man, and interestingly enough, he was an old man still about his work, shepherding and faithfully tending his flock at that time when God appeared to his faithful servant. And so Moses, as he's shepherding, comes across a burning bush, that was not indeed being burnt up, which interestingly enough would serve to be sort of a metaphor for exactly who God was and what God was revealing himself to be to Moses on that day. And God told Moses that his name, God calls Moses and tells him to return to lead his people out of Egypt. Moses says, but who am I going to tell them sent me? And then God says, tell them I am sent you. And it's interesting when Moses is asking that question, who am I going to tell them sent me? He's really asking sort of what's the character of the one. They know it's you, but who are you? And what kind of God are you? And so God responds with this great response. He says that I am is sending you. And it's in a sense kind of this incapturable name that God gives Moses at that time, that we really, there's no way for us to fully translate that or understand that. And yet at the same time, God is revealing himself to Moses. Well, what is that name? What does it mean? What does it mean that God is I am? How do we understand that? Well, part of what God is explaining in that name is that he's saying he is the one who is eternally present. He's eternally present wherever you are. He's eternally present sort of whenever you are. And that's part of what the wonderful thing about the fact that God appears to Moses in a burning bush. I mean, if you think about it, God's sort of almost given Moses right there in front of him a sermon illustration about who he is. It's a bush. It's a bush that's on fire. But that fire is not a fire that burns out. You think about sort of our relationships, oftentimes we think about our relationships in terms of fire, especially when we talk about romantic relationships, passions and fire that flame up and then inevitably sort of burn down, and eventually, people talk about falling out of love with one another, or they talk about sort of the fires being quenched in their love for one another. Well, God is the fire who is never quenched. The bush was, when God first encountered Moses, exactly as much on fire as it was when God finished his encounter with Moses. It was the bush that never stopped burning with the kind of burn that it had. You think about sort of us in terms of our own sort of engagement with stuff. I was just hearing sort of this report on games for iPhones and about Angry Birds, a game that I'm sure you're familiar with. If you ever played that game, how long was your attention wrapped in that game, trying to figure out exactly the right angle to fling those birds at the pigs. You lost interest over time, I'm sure, and maybe it stayed on your phone for a month or for 6 months, but eventually it wore out. And so too in our relationships, even with people. There's an end to understanding a person. And there's only so much information that you can download. But with God is infinite. God is beyond that in his relationship with us, and in terms of his own self, who he is. And I think that oftentimes we engage God much more like we engage an Angry Birds game than we engage God. Much more like that we would engage some hobby or fascination that we would get wrapped up into, invest something into, read the Bible, learn about God, and we think that there's some sort of an end to that. But the joy of God, the amazing thing about God is that there is no end. God is I am. God is eternally present and active. and you can understand more about God every day. In fact, that can go on for eternity, and that is why God has given us eternity, to know him and to be known by him. It's a tremendous blessing and tremendous reality about who he is. And so I'd encourage you today to sort of reinvigorate your life with God, your prayer life with God, knowing that your God is so infinite and so powerful. He is the great I am, who is ever present, ever active, and ever real in your life today, and even more so in your life tomorrow, and the day after that, and the day after that. There is no end to our great I am. Have a great day. I hope that you have a great day and a great week engaging God and seeking after the great I am.